Hello, everyone. Just a quick announcement. When I first started the podcast, I decided on the name the Mexisoul podcast because I was primarily interviewing guests that have been to the retreats. But then I realized we were talking about something deeper. These experiences all point back to one core truth. They help us remember who we are. So, with that said, I decided to change the name of the podcast to the Remember Who You Are podcast because that's what this journey is all about. So, I hope these stories continue to inform and inspire you, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Mexisoul podcast, where we discuss powerful and transformative plant medicine experiences. I'm your host, Ruger Aber. I run Mexisoul, a plant medicine retreat in Mexico, and I am here with my very special guest, Lauren Kelley. Hello. Lauren is a psychiatrist, and Lauren, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
My name's Lauren Kelley. I'm a psychiatrist currently treating a lot of veterans and practicing kind of all over the United States at the moment.
So the format of this podcast is we kind of talk, mainly the purpose is about a transformative plant medicine experience. But I like to go into first what it was like before that experience, kind of going into where people's beliefs and perspectives and the way they just viewed the world and themselves. And then we're going to talk about, what the experience was like itself. We can use as many examples as you'd like to share. And then kind of what shifted or what changed or what that was like afterwards. So if you want to go ahead and kind of discuss, I don't know, maybe what led you to doing this in the first place.
So that's a great question. I'd say what led me to a plant medicine ceremony was probably, um, from the patient side of things, I've struggled with depression off and on most of my life. And from the other side, as a treatment mental health professional, seeing other people struggle with it as well, and wanting to have as much information as possible to help people and to help myself. So personally, coming into a plant medicine ceremony for me was something that I had been thinking about for a number of years. Reading books, listening to other podcasts, doing some of my own personal research, listening to other people that have had experiences outside of traditional Western medicine. And I had been struggling for a number of years with depression, but it had gotten significantly worse after a traumatic loss of someone close to me um, in my life. My daughter's best friend was murdered in 2018 along with her mother, and it was something that really, the grief that I was facing felt insurmountable. I felt like I was really stuck and not able to move through my grief despite trying a lot of different um, Western approaches: medication, therapy, talking to people. I found that there was some benefit in a lot of the things that we offer to patients. And I felt like I had gotten some benefit out of medication and talk therapy, but it was only getting me so far. And I felt like I was really, really stuck and not able to move forward after this loss. And
Hmm.
so, in hearing other people's experiences and reading more about it, I wanted to see, is there some truth? Is there some healing? Is there some possibility of hope and transformation?
I
That's what brought
really,
me.
really appreciate you sharing that and just the willingness to be open and vulnerable about it. I can relate to some of those things on a personal level. I hadn't experienced specific trauma that caused it, but I also deeply resonate with just the feelings of hopelessness surrounded with just depression, and then trying multiple things and having some relief at some points, but just ultimately like not really having the breakthrough, or just coming to the point where it's just the hopelessness and the despair that the depression causes. I don't know if you can resonate with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I sit across from people every day that are, really, really, really struggling. And I think part of my journey as a mental health professional is feeling like the tools that I have to offer other people, when I started this journey, I thought they were going to be enough.
Mm,
I thought referring people to therapy and prescribing the right medications and listening empathetically and trying to find understanding, I thought that it was going to change more people's lives than I feel like it has. I've definitely seen the place of traditional Western medication and psychotherapy being life saving, life changing for a lot of people. But for a lot of people, I feel like there's something else more that we're not offering from a Western perspective. There's some other healing, and maybe there's ways to access it or more information that we just don't have within our training and experience in our culture. And so looking for people that have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years and finding healing in their communities, I wanted to learn more. I want to heal myself and be the best mental health professional I can be, um, and the best community member I can be, the best person I can be. And so, wanting to explore it from both somebody that's in a position to offer mental health care to other people, but also deeply feel like I am in need of mental health care and the system wasn't necessarily working for me as well as I had hoped it would.
mm. I'm just curious, if did you get into the field of mental health? I mean, specifically psychiatry, um, to kind of get a better understanding of yourself, or where did that develop or come from?
So I've wondered about that a lot. I had some really positive experiences when I went into medical school. Um, with psychiatry, I thought it was very interesting. I really enjoyed the work of talking to people and hearing about their struggles with mental health and social problems a lot more than I did about, you know, um, physical health problems. So I found that that was an interest. But I'm sure that, doing my own therapy, that it is probably something deeper. My childhood, I've always felt like from the beginning that I can remember, I didn't feel like I felt fit
Mm,
in my family, in society, in the world. I always felt like, everybody else was tuned in to radio channel and I was picking up a lot more static or just wasn't quite on the same wavelength as everyone else. And I think part of me was feeling like, okay, psychiatry, if you go in and really learn about the mind, how people behave, what feelings, um, they're feeling on a regular basis, really learn about brain chemistry and anatomy, it's going to answer all these questions that I have about myself. And it did in some ways. I think there's different layers that we can, different viewpoints that we can take as far as understanding the mind, understanding the brain, and understanding ourselves. Um, but I also feel like, family can play a role as well. And watching my mom struggle with her own mental health challenges when I was growing up, and really trying to be a support to her without
hmm
any resources as a child, and knowing that, the thing that really got her through was when she went to a psychiatrist and got on medication. I'm sure has more of an impact than I've really dug into in the past.
Thank you for sharing that. Something that I found like doing this kind of work is that I think how important it is to exist in both worlds, to have a lot of respect and support towards the old Western traditional model, but also at the same time being seeking more answers beyond what it offers, and to not have any like fear in doing that, or any. It's not like contradicting Western medicine, but I do think there's another component that could be very beneficial for people. And I don't know what your thoughts on this are, but I think that ultimately, whether it's plant medicine or whether it's Western psychiatry or whatever, it's really what is most beneficial and most helpful for the, let's call it, the patient. In my case, it's the guest, but the patient is really what is most important.
Oh, I totally agree. That more of an individualized approach and taking, what works from a lot of different aspects and a lot of different perspectives. And I think, that flexibility of being able to say, we don't need to burn down the institution of Western medicine in order to lift up, you know, indigenous and cultural practices in plant medicines.
Yeah. Well, even there's a lot of people in my world too that are very, very, very dismissive of antidepressants. And I believe that like antidepressants are not the solution, but I mean, they also probably saved my life at some point. And I think it's very important to just take things from a patient level versus what is the whole thing that's offered. I think what is most beneficial to the person is what's most important.
I will say antidepressants have helped me a lot. I think there were times where, that's what I needed to be able to keep functioning, to be able to keep doing my life, and to keep going. But I also think that there was a limit in the depth of healing that I was able to achieve with that. And yes, my life needed to keep moving forward, and I needed to function. But I also needed a place like Mexisoul to, step away from my life.
Hmm.
And I appreciate, you guys have a really good setting there and really great um, workers. Like Jamie was talking about her walks. I really resonated with, disconnecting from your routine, even if it's something brief, like a few days, a few weeks, to go inward, to go deeper.
Thank you. All right. So we have discussed where you kind of reached a breaking point in your own, let's call it healing, in your own process, your own journey. And you finally decided to try something outside of that comfort zone. And you did decide to do a plant medicine retreat. Um, can you tell me? I would love to hear. I really, this is the first time I'm hearing this, other than what you shared during the retreat. But I would really love to hear as much as you'd like to share from any of the experiences you had. Specific. I mean, we can talk about one of them or multiple, or however whatever you'd like to share.
So I just was reading through my journal from the experience, and I was only going to read the one that I felt was really powerful, but then I went back and read the other ceremony overviews that I had written when I was feeling a little frustrated. So we started with Combo, which is the venom of a tree frog, for a physical purging, and it's supposed to have healing properties. And that was our first ceremony. I had a good experience with that, as good as you can have with the combo, in feeling like your face is swelling and you're flushed, you're sweating, you're vomiting. And I'm a very sympathetic puker, so I was really worried that I was going to embarrass myself puking in front of everybody, but everybody was puking, so it was not a big deal. Um, It's kind of a bonding experience that you go through with everybody. And I was hoping that this was going to kickstart when we did our ayahuasca later that evening, that I was going to have all of the vomiting out of the way and go into it, have this beautiful transformative experience. However,
I'm guessing that wasn't part of the plan.
that was not part of my journey. Um, and I was really, really frustrated. I was having a really hard time that I didn't have this sort of immediate transformative experience that I was hoping for. So I came into it with a lot of expectations. Um, and I said, I'm welcoming anything. But what I was really welcoming was something. I wanted
Hmm.
something to happen, even if it was going to be unpleasant. I wanted to feel something. I wanted something to happen. Um, and when it didn't, it brought up a lot of these deeper feelings of like, I am broken beyond repair,
Mm.
that there is something fundamentally wrong with me, that I have, built up these walls that are too high, too strong. I'm never going to be able to break them down. I'm never going to be able to achieve this um, breakthrough. I'm not going to be able to heal. I'm going to be stuck here forever. I can't do this. I'm doing it wrong. It's just an overwhelming amount of negative emotions that I was sitting with. Um, and they weren't at all connected to the medication. I was like, the medication is not working. Um, so that was really frustrating. And I did share, I think, some of that in the circle, and it resonated with some other people that didn't feel like they were connected to the medicine too. And then the next day,
So
we
that
did
was your
maybe
experience for the first evening,
the
is
very first
basically very
ceremony. I
little
didn't feel anything. And I
except
was,
except frustration and
except for my
hopelessness
own
and
emotions of being, feeling like I was in this group, but also outside of this group,
Mhm.
and that it wasn't happening for me. And just sitting with that for several hours and feeling bad for myself and feeling like I wasn't doing ayahuasca right,
Mhm.
and that I never would be able to.
So why don't you tell us about the first night?
So the first night that we did ayahuasca as a ceremony, um, I didn't feel anything except
Mhm.
for my own feelings, which were intense. I was really expecting to have a psychedelic experience, which I did not have. Instead, I was feeling um, like I was broken, um, that I wasn't capable of connecting to the medication, that I was a failure, that I had built my own walls too high and I was never going to be able to overcome it, um, that I was going to be stuck forever, that I was never going to heal. So a lot of my own emotional baggage was coming up to the surface, but I wasn't having the psychedelic healing experience that I had wanted and had hoped for.
Hmm. It's interesting how sometimes the medicine works that way, though, because you say, I wasn't feeling anything, but if you think about it, you were. It just wasn't exactly the experience that you had hoped it was initially.
Oh yeah, it wasn't the profound transformative experience that that I put my expectations into, but
Hmm.
it was the experience that I needed at that time, was to acknowledge that I was bringing a lot of expectations into the ceremony, and that these residual things, these feelings of not being able to be healed, feeling like I am broken beyond repair, that's something that I needed to put some attention to.
Yeah.
And it was helpful to have that experience before I had my true psychedelic transformative experience, to kind of acknowledge this is where you are. These are some other things that you need to pay attention to. I think anytime that we're in a mental health setting, ideally, we should be feeling safe to look at some of our blind spots. And those are definitely some of my blind spots, that whether it was truly the medication, the
Hmm.
ayahuasca working for, through my own mind to bring that to the surface. I think it was powerful and useful in that way, and prepared me for the next ceremonies.
I think it's also good just to validate. I mean, it's good that you were able to validate the fact that, you know, those emotions and those feelings are yours and they're still valid and they're still there. And even if it's something that's not comfortable, but necessary to work through.
Right. And I think it's useful to be aware that the thing that we want to work on may not be the thing that we need to work on. You know, so I was coming with this thing of like, I want to be able to start to move through my grief. I don't want to look at my feelings of, you know, pain from childhood, or pain from not fitting in, or pain from feeling like I'm always going to have depression. I'm always going to be struggling on some level. I'm always going to feel a bit like an outsider.
Hmm. So that was basically your first night.
That was my
And
first night.
you weren't alone in, I guess, in that, though, the feeling.
No, and you're never alone in any of these feelings, right? But unless you speak up and say, if you're vulnerable and you say, hey, I'm feeling left out, I'm feeling
Hmm.
like I've done something wrong, I'm feeling unhealable, you're never going to know that somebody else is feeling that way until you're the one that voices it. And so I did have a lot of connection with other people that said, yeah, I didn't feel like I was able to connect. Yeah, I felt like it wasn't working for me in the way that I had expected it to work. And talking to other staff members, the finca owner sat down and talked to me the next morning at breakfast. We had a really long talk. And those things were healing. They made me feel like, okay, even if you're feeling different from everyone else, you still have a place here. You can still do work here, even if it doesn't come in the form that you're expecting it to. I was expecting a psychedelic experience, and that's not what I had, but I still had a healing experience from being vulnerable and sharing that vulnerability.
Beautiful. Well, do you want to continue on to, I guess, the second night or afternoon?
So the second ceremony that we did was the Satori ceremony, and I went into it with a lot more true felt acceptance than I probably brought into the first ceremony of like, okay, I might not connect, it might not be what I was expecting or wanting. And again, I didn't feel like I connected in it to the psychedelic aspect of the medication, but I still had a very warm, loving feeling in
Hmm.
that ceremony, but not feeling like I went into the depth of, you know, a dark night of the soul type of transformation.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it was a positive experience, but again, it wasn't what I had come for, and it wasn't what my expectation was, but I was able to take it away of, okay, even if nothing goes the way that I'm planning in my mind that it'll go, I still am here having this beautiful experience and um, finding a lot of love and connection within the circle. The second time that we did the ayahuasca, though, I definitely had a powerful, healing, transformative psychedelic experience that I was looking for and that I was wanting, and that was the healing that I really needed. And it was amazing.
So, how deep would you like to go on describing that one?
Um, I'm comfortable in sharing it. You know, I have some reservations in that I never really considered myself a deeply spiritual person
Hmm.
for most of my life. So I can say that I came into the ceremony feeling depressed and wanting to be less depressed, and feeling like I was not able to get over the death of this close family friend. And I think part of it, I knew on some level that because the loss was violent and traumatic
Hmm.
and unexpected, that I was having a lot of trouble with that. And I will give credit to Western medicine in that, you know, initially I was having a lot of survivor's guilt
Hmm.
and feeling like, what was there What did I miss? What could I have done? How I kept turning this question over of like, what could I have done to have saved her life?
Hmm.
And, you know, through therapy and talking to friends and taking medication, I was able to, with logic, get to a place of resolution where I realized I it wasn't my fault, and I wasn't responsible, and that there was nothing I could have done that could have changed this. Because I
Hmm.
think for a lot of years, a lot of my depression is turning over these existential questions of like, was there something else I could have done? Was there something I could have seen that could have changed this outcome? Why didn't this child spend the night at my house that night instead of the night before? And I spent a lot of time and energy turning these questions over and over in my mind unproductively. So, therapy had helped me, talking to friends had really helped me come to a point where, on a logical level, I knew she was gone. I knew that there was nothing I could do to get her back. I knew that there was nothing that was going to change the outcome of this. But like, with the point of view that I have now, I realize the grief that I was holding on to was my last like connection
Mm.
with her, and that because her death was traumatic, and that there was a part of me that felt like her last moments she was suffering,
Mm.
that she would have felt alone, and she would have felt terror. And on some level, I think that I was trying to be there with her in my own suffering so that she wasn't alone. And I know that
Mm.
that doesn't make a logical sense, but I think that's where my grief was living, was like trying in some way to hold on to her. And that grief was the last thing that I had, that I felt like I had of hers, and not wanting her to be alone in the suffering. And in the ceremony, I was able to get the closure that I really needed. I felt for the first time like my soul and her soul were able to come together and have a conversation, and that
Mm.
she was able to reassure me, I'm not suffering. I'm not suffering at all. I am totally at peace. My mother is here with me. We're at peace. We don't blame you. There was nothing you could have done to change this. Um, and that was not at all what I was expecting to have from this experience, but it really was what I needed in order to let go of the pain that I kept holding on to, in trying to be there for her in on some level so she wouldn't be alone in her suffering.
Wow. So in that third ceremony, you were almost able to have a dialogue between yourself and her, or a version of her.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for sharing that. Is there, I mean, that's pretty powerful.
It really changed my view on um what is after this.
Hmm.
I think a lot about existential questions of who are we as individuals. We're not necessarily our bodies, our DNA, our
Hmm.
minds, our thoughts. We are, in my view, a soul just
Hmm.
having a human experience. um, and that really brought that feeling into a lot more clarity than I had been able to articulate at any other time in my life. And being able to have a sense of knowing that she is at peace, that something beyond what we understand right now. And we are lucky to be able to experience, access to a different part of our mind or our understanding through something like plant medicine is a gift.
Yeah, powerful. Well, I mean, I think you kind of covered it, but the third part of this discussion that I like to have is kind of what shifted or what changed. And I mean, I think you kind of said it. You had more of an understanding of more of an understanding and a grasp just of like what the purpose of us being here, which these are kind of my words, but it's just living this human experience as a spiritual being.
And I wouldn't have necessarily said that before
Mm-hmm.
plant medicine. I didn't necessarily feel like spirituality was something that was an essential to my understanding of the world. I was raised Catholic and went to Catholic school for the first time that I did first grade, but I repeated first grade. And in moving from first grade the first time to the second time, I went to a completely different school than Catholic school. I went to an arts impact school that had no formal grading, no formal grade levels. It was just basically make art all the time and learn where you can, which was a great fit for me when I was a small child. Um, but I remember the beliefs and the structure and the rigidity of religion in my early life didn't feel like it fit for me.
Mm-hmm.
I really resonated with the tenets of um, Jesus and wanting to be a good person, treat other people the way that you would want to be treated. But there was some of the rigidity and power structure and hypocrisy that I didn't have a word for as a child, but saw and didn't sit right with me. That's kind of made me hesitant to embrace any sort of formal religion. So I would have said for most of my life,
Especially
I've
after getting into the art school.
yeah, so I'm definitely a type B person. I've liked rigidity. I think it's a good I think structure is a good way to, learn about the world, but
Mm-hmm.
um from a religious point of view, I think I've rejected religion because of rejecting like the formal power structures that a lot of people, that's their only access to God and to religion is, or to spirituality, is through religion.
Mm-hmm.
Um and having lost people and not having a spiritual um understanding of the afterlife, feeling like, okay, our life here is precious, and then when it's over, it's over. Not that anybody in power is judging us and there's eternal, you know, bliss or punishment based on how you've lived your life, but that it's important to live your life right now to the best of your ability. And losing people, I lost my grandmother when I was really young, and then the father of my child when she was 10. Um, and then having lost this child in my life, I was really getting stuck on the the fragility of life, the senselessness of, these bad things that happen in the world, and trying to come to a sense of like, what is our purpose? Why are we here? Why are these bad things happening?
Mm-hmm.
And not really being able to make a lot of progress with that. Really feeling very stuck and not feeling like religion has the answer, but that there's something bigger than all of us. And there's some reason why we're here, and it's important to be good, and it's important to connect with other people.
So how has that shifted, I guess, in the way you approach clients now? or your practice now?
That's a good question. I think it's still evolving. I think I'm very much um, at the phase of my life that if I was a caterpillar before, kind of consuming information from a lot of different sources, trying to figure things out, I'm now just in my cocoon, dissolving, trying to rebuild into whatever the next step is going to be. I think I'm trying to find my footing and knowing that I want to do something a bit different. I don't think I want to continue, you know, in a strictly Western medicine mental health role.
Hmm.
I want to do something a bit more expansive or a bit deeper. So I want to find what's next and incorporate this. But I'm not sure exactly how that's going to look.
Yeah, it was very eloquently said. And I'm assuming that you'll be still doing something that helps people.
Yeah, I want to be in the realm of mental health. But I don't know that 30-minute visits once a month to primarily focus on medications. I don't know that
Hmm.
that's the role that's been the best fit going forward. I've liked structure and I've liked a clear path, but that path has led me to this point, and now I'm just kind of taking in this perspective and trying to figure out where to go next. It'll be in this realm, but less rigid, less structured, I think. Like to have time to talk to people on a deeper level.
So you'll
More.
find your own art school. Question I always ask people too is just what would you say to anyone who's considering doing plant medicine?
I think that's a really good question. My own psychiatrist was asking me about that when I was talking to him about going and doing this. And one of the things that maybe was a little bit of a blind spot for me was making sure that, there's a safe place to do it.
Hmm.
And that not everybody in the mental health field in Western medicine or in plant medicine has your best interest at heart. And I was lucky that I ended up where I ended up because you guys definitely do. I liked that Umberto ceremonies. He really leads with the fact that the healing is within you.
Hmm.
And I think for most of my life, I've been looking outside of myself for the answers for everything, and that to have faith and to look within yourself for your own healing is really powerful. And so recognizing that there are places where plant medicine does take that approach of, this is, we're not here externally to heal you, but that you are able to heal yourself through this experience. So I would say, finding the right set and setting, the mindset going into it of being open to something that's powerful and transformative, but also not if you're feeling like,
Yeah.
you're alone, sit with that. And also, finding the right space to be able to explore this. And I think for me, the environment that you guys have created was really important to feel like anything that comes up is accepted and that you can cry, can roll around on the ground, can scream, whatever the experience is for you, there's space for you there within the circle, and that everybody is, you know, going to keep your body safe as your mind or your soul goes on this journey.
Yeah. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you, and I might just kind of add a little bit. It is something that somebody needs to be ready for, but ready for, and also willing to accept that it is something that might be challenging. Just to your point of having almost two ceremonies where it wasn't meeting the expectations, and so sometimes that is something that's common too as well.
Yeah.
Well, Lauren, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with me, and I wish you the best luck in your endeavor of finding whatever is the next step in your evolution, and whatever that will look like, as whatever it looks like for you as the butterfly.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You are interested in a plant medicine experience, check out Mexisoul, and I'm happy to answer any questions or concerns anybody might have.
Thanks for all you do, Ruger.
Thank you.